How many people were at the meetings about the Noe Valley Plaza? You're extra fun. Well, I was at those meetings too, and at the first meeting, we were all, Raphael and I were the two candidates who were present. We were called up and said, what's your position on the plaza? And I very candidly, because one thing you're going to learn about me, you're never ever going to have to guess where I am on an issue. And I got up there and I said that I thought it was a good idea. And I knew that half the people in the room, or a little more than half, I was going to go down in their estimation, and I was willing to take that. Now, I will also say that I'm not the kind of person who, or supervisor, who's going to come in and shove something down anyone's throat. There has to be a community process. There has to be community support. You know, it's not good to have projects that are going to divide a community for a generation. And the process around the Noe Plaza was not even close to ideal. And my way of doing things is you don't start out by throwing it out there in the Examiner. I think the mayor announced it in the Examiner. And then everyone just sort of explodes. You have to start at the basics in terms of talking to people, seeing what people want, and moving from there. And that's how I'll do it. I am a strong supporter of the Noe Valley Ministry Plaza idea. We have an open space fund. If we can work it so that that purchases a portion or all of that parking lot and we can convert it into public space, that would be a terrific idea, and I will show leadership in working with you to make that happen.
Thank you. Next is Raphael Mandelman.
Well, I think that the answer that I gave at that first meeting was actually very much like the answer that Scott just gave on the right approach of an elected official to something like the proposal for the park, for the plaza at 24th and Noe, which is, my bias is also in favor of plazas. I have been on the board of Livable City, which, as I told you earlier, believes in plazas, believes in livable streets. But my sense was that this was an issue that really needs to get worked out by the community. And what was sad for me, and I think sort of amusing to the broader world, was that this what should have been a fairly civil discussion about what could happen on that intersection became World War III. And I do think it had something to do with the fact that this was dropped on the neighbors without them having a whole lot of time to prepare. There was, I think, a lack of mutual regard on all sides. I think we should be nicer to each other. But I think that to create the conditions in which we can be nicer to each other, I think we need to do more community planning. So I think particularly in a place like in Noe Valley, along 24th Street, there's a whole bunch of issues. There's still the empty real foods. There's still the parking lot that we have to figure out, which actually has been an issue for about, at least 10 years. And potentially there could be good things to be done with either parklets or plazas or something at 24th and Noe. Plus we have the whole question of, the proliferation of banks and realtors' offices and what does the community want from that strip? I think that there needs to be a full, comprehensive planning process that brings community together and where people talk and vision. And we've started doing that, I think, around the parking lot. I think the discussions around the parking lot, I hope, will be broadened to be a whole discussion of what the community really wants from that strip.
Thank you. And Bill.
Well, I obviously agree with these two. It's got to be community. Everyone's got to have a voice and an opinion on this. I think people that come together and come to these meetings are passionate about this community and about this neighborhood. And I just think it needs to be consensus. I think there needs to be some sort of order to some of it. It seems a little chaotic at times. The 17th Street Plaza, the Castro, was not nearly as hotly contested, but this, I think, is I think it's a really important part of what Noe Valley is going to become, and the whole Livable Streets initiative, I think, is wonderful. I'm in full support of it. If you go down to Visadero, you go down to Valencia, it looks amazing. So I'm in full support of it. But I think obviously everyone would agree that we need to have a consensus among everyone. So, thanks.
Rebecca.
When I was working for Willie Brown back in the Stone Ages in the late 90s, there was a proposal to put together a 17th Street Plaza. Neighbors went nuts. They hated the idea. They actually thought that the 17th Street, that little corridor, was usable space. Nobody wanted it. It took 10 years to see that come to fruition and see what it is today. I've also been fortunate to be a Recreation Park Commissioner, and I've seen how, as a commissioner, people have very different opinions about the uses of parks. Dogs, kids, Tai Chi spaces, et cetera, and the different uses. When the issue around the parklet versus plaza came, it was heated right away. I was standing outside doing budget surveys, and one woman wouldn't even fill out my budget survey because I told her I didn't think it was a good idea. Because I knew, knowing that it was a usable street, and I have to side note, I took a little vacation from campaigning today, went to Union Square, and ran into someone who's in the audience, and she told me the story about how she saw somebody have a heart attack in a car. It came right down Noe Street, and there was a horrible accident and somebody died. And it was for those reasons that she didn't think the plaza was a good idea. Long story short, the reason why it was so flawed was because people walked into this room not trusting government, not trusting a good process. That's not what kind of supervisor I will be. There'll be notice, there'll be flyers, there'll be discussion. We'll all talk about it. If you look at the difference between the way the plaza meetings were done, and I was here for the first one, I had to leave early because I had a fundraiser. And you look at what was put together for the garage space, the gas station that's turned into a parking lot that's now potentially parklet, it was a world of difference. The pro-parklet, anti-parklet, pro-plaza people all sat around and said, what do we want in that space? That's what it should be, and that's what I'll deliver.
Okay, great, thanks. We're going to speed